Hello everyone, my name is Paul. Welcome back to the new news. I hope that everyone's having a fantastic day. I hope that you and your family and your friends are safe, and if not, I do hope that you find that safety and security in the very near future. There's some stuff going on today throughout the news, not quite as much, but as they say, no news is good news, because generally speaking, what makes the news is stuff that's relatively terrible. Things that just are pretty awful in general, whether you're talking about wars, conflict, terrorism, you're talking about natural disasters, humanitarian disasters, what have you. Now, that's generally speaking what ends up making the news. But that doesn't mean that you can't be one to give back, because the whole point of this project is to not just inform you as a viewer, but to give you an opportunity to help us be the news that gives back by giving back to the people directly affected by these situations. In the video description below, you're going to see a ton of different organizations down there. All of them, 70% or more of their donations go directly to their programs, meaning they go to actually helping people, with 30% or less going to things such as salaries and administration's costs. Outside of that, if you would like to go ahead and donate to those organizations, if you can't donate a lot, give a little. If you can't give anything at all, that's okay too. One of the biggest things you can do to help us is actually to help us grow this channel. The more people that come here and watch the news, become informed of what's happening to them or happening to people around them and throughout the world, the more of an impact we will have as a community. And you guys have built a pretty awesome community here. It's been awesome to be a part of. So please be sure if to give us that like and subscribe, share this amongst your friends and communities, as this will help you. This is really helps the channel, help us expand that impact. Before we jump into the news here, if you have any questions and you're joining with us live tonight, please feel free to jump onto the live chat. I am watching it, and I am happy to address any comments or questions that may have popped up during the stream. If you're new here, give you a little bit of background on myself. I served in the Marine Corps between 2016 and 2020. I was an 0352 anti-tank missileman and a corporal with 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. During my time in the Marine Corps, I did 2 tours in the Middle East. My first tour between October of 2017 and March of 2018, I spent 4.5 months in the country of Syria, where I supported Operation Inherent Resolve and coalition partners, including the SDF, in fighting the Islamic State, as well as providing stabilization efforts to northeastern Syria, north of the Euphrates River. After that, I came back to the United States, where I ran an armory for my company for roughly a year and a half, almost 2 years, before redeploying back to the Middle East in October of 2019 through March of 2020. During that time, I was in charge of the Javelin anti-tank team there with the Crisis Response Company out of Kuwait, where I spent the majority of my time, for being called to the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad on New Year's of 2020 in order to assist with its defense, as it was currently being overrun with protesters and members of Kataib Hezbollah. During that time, I spent about a month and a half there in the Baghdad Embassy, and I oversaw all anti-armor operations over the Baghdad Embassy complex, before being rotated down into the Red Sea, down by Saudi Arabia, to train Saudi Arabian Marines who were preparing to deploy to Yemen as part of the Saudi coalition fighting the Houthi rebels there. I'm a subject matter expert in anti-armor warfare and armored doctrine, but I'm also a fully cross-trained machine gunner, a fully cross-trained rifleman, a partially cross-trained radio operator, as well as a CLS, or Combat Lifesaver Certified Marine, meaning I've received additional medical training on top of what most Marines do receive, and I do have battlefield experience in providing casualties to the injured. So outside of that, I do try to maintain being well-rounded. I have interest in history, geopolitics, human geography, and a wide spectrum of other things, history and science included. And while I claim to not be an expert in any of them, I do find interest in them and will still try to address your questions within my realm of knowledge. Outside of that, though, it doesn't matter if I'm an expert or not. I always implore that you, as the viewer, please do your own research. There's no substitute for your own research whenever going on and talking about these kinds of conversations. No single source is going to have everything, so it's always imperative that you're doing your own research going through. And if you would like a starting place, our maps, including all of our archived maps going clear back until April of last year, are on our official website. The link's in the description below. These are posted every single night before the stream even starts, so this one is also available on that website, and you can go and check them out. There's many times there's going to be associated links and articles and documents that we may not have to be shown here on the stream, but we do have it available for you if you would like to know more. And with that, we immediately roll here and into the actual news, starting off, of course, with the country of Ukraine. That is where the most major developments are ongoing for the night, as we have been following this war. The war against Ukraine started on February the 24th of 2022, which was launched by the Russian Federation. This isn't the first time this has happened. The Russian Federation also did incursions back in 2014, but what we're seeing here is a couple of developments coming out of the Kyiv area. The first one The first development we have coming out of Ukraine is the fact that they will be creating a new type of doctrine. It will be UAV strike companies. It's a new doctrine within their military unit. This is because of, this is going to be the very first in the world strike companies made. These are specifically designed to use these quadcopters, UAVs, these suicide drones, primarily talking about the Switchblade systems, to engage in direct action against Russian forces, but also to provide reconnaissance and forward observation for artillery. This is something that we have already seen throughout the duration of war. It's become increasingly important on both sides to provide these kinds of things. But so far, and even in how the Marine Corps sees the doctrine, when that Force Design 2030 came out, is having those UAV teams embedded directly into their associated units. Ukraine is currently doing that with what they have available at the front line. But to simplify command and control and flexibility on the battlefield, and supply lines are going to raise, train, and deploy whole purpose-built units for UAV strikes. So it's going to be a very interesting doctrine, and this is something that the world's going to be looking at, because being the world's first, this is something other countries have already talked about. It's something that's already been in the works. Ukraine is the first one to act on it because of the situation they find themselves in, and so you can bet the United States and every other country in the world is going to be taking notice, given how important drones have started to play on the battlefield, starting, of course, in Syria and Iraq during the insurgencies there, and quickly moving into the effective use by the Islamic State, and now even more so on the industrial level here and purpose-built level here inside of Ukraine. We see this is coming from the Combined Armed Forces official Telegram channel. This is them announcing that they will be providing those, that they will be creating those strike units. Same thing coming from the Combined Forces. There was an interview conducted here talking about the creation of those armed forces. Once again, referencing that Telegram channel. This is Lieutenant General Sergei Neyev, who is in charge. He said they need to form the first UAV strike companies. See Rooster Fontaine jumping in here. Hello, Rooster. It's always a pleasure to see you. Other developments coming out of the Donetsk region tonight, of course, and we have a couple of different developments. Of course, we get our daily Donetsk update. This is the latest one coming from Pavel Kolenko, who's the head of the Donetsk Regional Military Administration. He stated, quote, on January 27th, the number of victims of Russian army in Donetsk Oblast increased by 4 killed, 7 injured. And we do get that graphic coming out, of course. This came out at 8 a.m. local time this morning, and it's both in Russian, or it's both in Ukrainian and in English. In Peraskovivka, 3 people were killed, 4 were injured. In Velika Novosilka, 1 person was killed. Bakhmut, 2 were injured. And in Berdichi, 1 was killed, or sorry, 1 was injured. They have them listed all as killed, but the red is people who've been killed, blue is injured. So far, since the beginning of the strikes against Ukraine, since the beginning of the open invasion of the country of Ukraine, 1,330 Ukrainian civilians have been killed in the Donetsk region, with an additional 2,912 having been injured. This is not included in areas that are currently still under occupation, whether that be Volnovakha, the city of Donetsk, the city of Mariupol, where tens of thousands we know have already been killed, and those have been very well documented by the mass grave sites and analysis of those mass grave sites using satellite footage. So the true numbers are significantly higher than what has already been described. And from Bakhmut does hold, but heavy fighting does continue. Heavy fighting's been going on for well over half a year now, with the official ground attacks against Bakhmut proper really beginning back on June 4th, at least according to our records and from our analysis. And this brutal struggle for this 23-mile front line coming from the north but by Bilohorivka down to Zaitsev down to the south. And this front line has been some of the most brutal of the entire war. Trench warfare, absolute horrendous conditions, indiscriminate bombardments that have all but leveled the city of Bakhmut itself. Heavy fighting is continuing on the outskirts as Russian forces continue to try and apply pressure to Bakhmut, especially after recent victories up there in Soledar, where Ukrainian forces are now working on containment and restructuring defensive lines appropriately.
Сломала.
А, сука.
Блядь, а что мы будем
Я его.
нам сработали. Сломала.
А, сука.
Yeah, that does not seem like a fun time. Those sound like some pretty big rounds impacting nearby.
Ну да. Ну да.
So of course you can hear pretty that close fighting there, or urban fighting definitely. Book of 40 says that you hear a lot about logistics issues with new equipment. I assume certain tanks go to certain units only to ease logistics. I certainly hope so. Yes and no. So yes, there are logistical issues that will arise because you're looking at a multitude of different platforms. And you can see this with the M109 Paladins that have been provided versus the PhD 2000s that are provided versus the Russian former Soviet style equipment provided. You know, there's a lot of logistical challenges because there's so many different types of equipment that have been sent to Ukraine from so many different places. It becomes a logistics nightmare, and that's certainly true. But the great thing about this is a lot of this equipment is NATO. It's NATO equipment or countries that have aligned with NATO but don't reside in the Atlantic, so they still follow the same general platform basics that NATO countries will. This comes down to simple things like ammunition types. You know, most countries running that 5.56 by 4.5 NATO standard round, or the 7.62 by 5.1 standard NATO, or the 12.7 by 9.9 millimeter, right? Or you could say the same thing for the 40 millimeter grenades. You know, basic stuff. And this, you know, upscales larger things too. The 120 millimeter round you're talking about for mortars, 81 and 60s as well. The 120 millimeter main tank gun round, the 155 millimeter artillery round. That's the point. NATO stuff's supposed to be interchangeable. It's supposed to simplify logistics between multiple nations. That is the point. That is one of the reasons behind that agreement. So, yes, does the tanks being logistically challenging to begin with, based off of what they require, yes, that can be a challenge, but these tanks are built while not having exactly the same capabilities and being tweaked to the wants of their intended governments, the ones that are manufacturing the domestic manufacturer of these. Most of them are operated in a way that is their design includes features that are universal in principle, so that should a land war have broken out in 1985, that these vehicles, the Abrams, the Challenger 2, the Leopard 1, the Leopard 2, these vehicles would be able to operate interchangeably with one another with simplified supply lines. Still logistical challenge. It will always be a logistical challenge. There's always some small things, which when you get enough of it turns into a big problem. But generally speaking, these tanks can, for all intents and purposes, operate relatively universally with many of the basic requirements for the tanks. When you're talking about battlefield damage and the necessity for maintenance and repairs, that's probably where the logistical challenges really start to get more difficult. But for the most part, these things are going to run on fuel. Everyone's talking about, oh, the M1 Abrams requires jet fuel. No, the M1 Abrams prefers jet fuel. It's called JP8. It's a type of fuel. You know what else runs on JP8? Every other military vehicle in the Marine Corps and in the U.S. military, therefore. Because JP8 is just the preferred method. It's diesel fuel. It's a type of diesel fuel. It's a high kerosene diesel. That's what makes it a type of jet fuel. Now, the JP8 is technically jet fuel, but Humvees run on JP8, tanks run on JP8, but they can also run on just about anything else. Those engines are built, it was purpose built to not just be modular for repairs in the field, because you can swap out the M1 Abrams engine in about an hour. It's completely modular. But the thing is that these things can run on multiple fuel types, understanding the difficulty in sourcing fuels, especially in types of full-scale war. So logistical challenges may be there, but just because something's not optimal doesn't necessarily mean it can't be done, because that was a forethought that was put into these things. Is we would prefer to have JP8, but it's not a requirement given if the circumstances are bad enough. I like to joke that you could damn near put peanut butter inside of the gas tank of an M1 Abrams, and it may very well start it. And down here in Kostyantynivka, rockets ended up striking Kostyantynivka. Once again, it was targeted, of course, by Russian artillery. And they landed in and around the residential areas of the city, killing at least 3 people, wounding an additional 6. Coming from Come Back Alive. In Donbass Frontier. De Zepper. National Police of Ukraine. Absolutely horrific. Coming from Pavel Kolenko.
Була дома. Одівалась, на базар хотіла йти. Як бехнуло, я нічого не поняла. Туди всі окна, телевізор упав, холодильник відкрився, двері перекосило.
Зайдите на 3-й этаж, там просто нету ни окон, ни дверей, просто раскрыта квартира, вот так вот. На ту сторону все видно, все выбило. У ее соседей аж дверь вывернула.
More from Pavel Kolenko. Once again, showing some of that damage. Some of those same photos being posted by de Zepper. And so those are the results of these strikes there on Kostyantynivka. Outside of that, there isn't a lot else that has happened that has made any headlines or is anything that we can pinpoint happening inside of Ukraine. There have been several talks of other incidents right now, but that we don't have a lot of information, did not have enough information on to say with any kind of certainty what was happening for sure. So those will probably end up in our 48-hour update when we're looking at it there on Monday. But that is it for everything inside of Ukraine, but there's plenty of other stuff happening throughout the world too. We jump up here into Moscow, where it would appear that yesterday one of the helicopters of the Russian presidential helicopter fleet crashed upon takeoff outside of Moscow. The Mi-8 transport helicopter appears to have conducted a hard landing immediately after takeoff. Images suggest catastrophic failure of the anti-torque or tail rotor, which has visible damage to its blades. That is the Mi-8 there. And this is the image that we're talking about. I might actually be better to go back here for you guys. You can see where there are parts of the tail rotor which have these blades are completely shredded. Helicopter blades have a lifespan. If they're not replaced, these things actually quite literally will just shred themselves apart. They can only last for X amount of flight hours before they're required to be replaced. It's very possible that they could have gone past that. Coming out of Warsaw, Poland, an amendment to the Special Act has occurred. The international rescue community called for more support to Ukrainian refugees staying in Poland, as the amendment to Special Act is taking effect on March the 1st, when Ukrainian refugees who have stayed in Poland for over 180 days would be required to cover 50% of the accommodation fee. The share would increase up to 75% from June 1st. This is occurring when inflation in Poland is estimated to reach 18.8% during the first quarter of 2023. If you want more on that, you can go to www.rescue.org, or you can click the link on our website where we do have additional information on that. Another big news tonight, the OPCW finds Syria responsible for the 2018 attack. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, or OPCW, has provided a new update regarding their investigation on a 2018 chemical weapons attack in the Syrian town of Douma. It has concluded in its official report delivered at The Hague that there is reasonable grounds to believe that the Syrian Air Force under Bashar al-Assad used chlorine gas delivered via aircraft on the settlement. This resulted in the deaths of 43 people with the injury of dozens of others. It has also stated that the Syrian government has failed to comply with the 2013 UN Security Council Resolution 2118 and has done so systematically, as well as violations of the Chemical Convention. Syria has stated it rejects its findings. Meanwhile, it is reported that the day of the attack, Russian military police went to the site and attempted to sanitize it in efforts to prevent the OPCW from carrying out a thorough investigation. Coming from the European Union's External Action Service, as well as the OPCW themselves. Ministry of Foreign Affairs for Turkey also released a statement. The Investigation and Identification Team of the Organization of Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, established with a mandate to identify those responsible for the chemical weapons attack in Syria, and concluding in its third report that the regime is the perpetrator of the chlorine gas attack that took place in Douma on 7th of April 2018. The responsibility of the regime for another chemical weapons attack has been confirmed. Turkey will continue to support the efforts, first and foremost by UN and OPCW, aiming to ensure accountability in Syria. Coming from the French government, who released a joint statement. It's a rather long statement. Minister of Foreign and European Affairs for the Slovak Republic. The world now knows the facts. It is up to the international community to take action at the OPCW and beyond. Ministry of Foreign Affairs for Austria. The Irish Foreign Ministry, and of course the German Foreign Ministry office. Meanwhile, of course, the OPCW recently released a statement, but you can also get a full copy of their report, which we do have also listed here. This is the official report released on the 27th of January, 2023. There's more information, and the EU External Action also released a statement on that. But if you would like to read more, there are 4 other articles that have been posted on this that we have connected to it from Al Jazeera, U.S. News, iFiberon, and Reuters. Coming from the United Kingdom, the training of Ukrainian troops does continue. Training new Ukrainian recruits to endure the rigors of warfare is no easy task, but it continues for the coalition of NATO military instructors. That coalition has expanded with the Australians sending a contingent to assist. Meanwhile, the Canadian instructors trained Ukrainians in the basics of tactical combat casualty care, or TCCC. The important basics of stuffing a wound, applying a chest seal, and of course applying a tourniquet. All of these are very much life-saving measures that are very important for the battlefield. These absolute basics are principles you will fall back upon. Nothing is probably more important on the battlefield than your brain and a tourniquet. This is the Australian troops who are preparing to deploy. Canadian instructors showing Ukrainian troops how to properly apply a CAT tourniquet, or a combat application tourniquet is what that stands for. These are incredibly important. Meanwhile, in Istanbul, Mobile Soup Kitchen has left for Ukraine. As Mobile Soup Kitchen is dispatched by the IHH Humanitarian Relief Foundation, has left Istanbul and is heading to Ukraine. The goal is to supply daily food to 30,000 Ukrainians. 3 trucks of supplies provided by the IHH is also being delivered. They have, of course, released a ton of photos of the that vehicle that are very, very slow to load. Come on, Turkey. Your internet's better than this. I guess their internet is not better than this. So, literally has truckloads of food, and it's a soup kitchen. Pretty awesome to see. Millions of people are currently internally displaced inside of Ukraine as well. So that'll be a very, very welcome. We have 3 separate developments coming out of Jerusalem tonight. So the Hamas has taken responsibility for the synagogue attack that occurred. The terror network Hamas has taken responsibility for the attack on the Jewish synagogue in Jerusalem. The attack left 7 people dead and many more injured. It was in response to the recent deadly raid in Jenin carried out by the Israeli Defense Forces, which left 9 people dead, both militants and civilians. Meanwhile, 42 Palestinians were arrested. The Israeli police arrested about 42 Palestinians in East Jerusalem, some of whom were relatives and friends and neighbors of the gunmen who conducted the massacre at the synagogue yesterday. Another terrorist attack occurred in Jerusalem, this time a 13-year-old Palestinian who attacked a group of Israelis, among which was a soldier who wounded the attacker with return fire. As a result of the attack, 2 Israelis were wounded. quite a bit of tension on there going in Jerusalem and in Israel. Israel says via diplomacy they're heavily involved in aiding Ukraine. Wonder what? That could be a lot of things. But I do not know enough. You know, you have to understand there's a lot of things when it comes to backdoor politics. I just don't know, because you have to be in those circles to understand what they're talking about. And that's kind of the hardest part. A lot of people have, you know, there's political experts and what have you, and there's certainly people that are probably going to be more knowledgeable and stuff than me. But applying additional political pressure on, say, other countries to do things or not to do things, depending on what you're wanting, is definitely a useful tool, especially when it's behind closed-door deals. But that doesn't mean that you can't have an open support to it either. In India, 2 fighter jets ended up crashing, and 2 Indian Air Force fighter planes, an Su-30 and a Mirage 2000, crashed at the Madhya Pradesh during training flight. One of the pilots was killed.
जब आग लगा जा रही है आग लगा जा रही है आदमी तो होगा
Meanwhile, down here in Rwanda, a situation update on refugees from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The escalation of fighting with the eastern DRC has resulted in an increase of refugees arriving in Rwanda. From mid-November 2022 to 24 January 2023, 3,348 individuals have arrived in Rwanda. Until early January, refugees were received at Kijote Transit Center before being transferred to the Mahama Departure Center and the Mahama Refugee Camp. Due to increasing numbers, the government of Rwanda is transferring refugees to a new site in Nikamira. The Relief Web does have more information on that if you guys are so interested. While in Niger, the Islamic State field commander has been eliminated. During counterterrorism operation, the field commander of the Islamic State and his 2 subordinates were eliminated. The operation took place at the beginning of the week in the settlement of Sanam. It is reported that the French Air Force attacked the terrorists when the security forces of Niger, who arrived at the scene, recorded the destruction of the militants and seized weapons and documents. According to security forces, the liquidated jihadists provided communications between MTO cells in Mali, Niger, and Nigeria. And across the Atlantic in the U.S. for our final point, protests have erupted after body cam footage has been released. On January the 7th, police stopped the car of 29-year-old Tyre Nichols for reckless driving. According to a police statement, there was an altercation between the officers and the driver. Nichols died in the hospital 3 days later from his injuries. After an internal investigation, After an internal investigation, all 5 police officers were fired, taken into custody, and charged with second-degree murder. They face up to 60 years in prison.
با چرا نمیدونم چی
Oh, damn.
یا یه پهپاد بود درسته؟
Well then, let's see here. Let's go to our Middle East sources. Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Iran. Yep, that one too. Cool. Currently trying to see if there's more information from any of our sources here. So it appears that there's also reports of a separate fire in Azashar, Iran's East Azerbaijan province. This is what we're looking at. This is coming as reports of explosions there. They're saying that there are no reports. It's that the explosion occurred in tanks with oil due to high temperature. There's a powerful earthquake of 5.9 earlier, which would probably have caused this. So kind of unrelated to that. Sorry, folks, we're trying to find good information on this, which can be kind of difficult, especially on the fly. So I apologize if it seems a little different than what we're usually doing. ICRC. Conflict Armament Research Team. No, same thing. So explosions are occurred so far. They are being reported at Hamadan, Isfahan, and Karaj, and reports that air defenses have been activated over the Hamadan Air Base in the northwestern part of the country. This video of this blast is at an ammunition depot for the Ministry of Defense there in Isfahan. There's a second video here. Okay, let's see if we got anything else here. At least go back. See what Iran's media's got to say. We do have the Iranian state-affiliated media. Nothing yet. Nothing yet from Iran's press TV. Israel Defense Forces. Nothing from the Israeli Defense Forces yet. Or the Foreign Ministry. So, looks like very limited information as of right now coming out about this story, but it does appear that there has been something that has happened. It definitely looks like a strike of some kind, at least in the city of... Where are we at here? In the city of Isfahan. In the past hour, it's Isfahan, Khoy West Azerbaijan, Azshar, East Azerbaijan, Karaj, Alborz province. There's some reported footage from the Khoy province. So that is what we got right now. Not a lot to go off of, obviously. When stuff like this happens, it does take a little bit for information to come out. So that is kind of what we're looking at right now. Is just it takes time. So quite a lot. Explosion in the Ministry of Defense Depot in central Iran. Yep. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. What we do have will be posted. I will be making this update. Actually, I can do it now. Isfahan. Isfahan. So this is Isfahan. This is what we're looking at here. Yep. Okay, so once we get some more information, after we get done here, we're gonna be able to put together probably something a little bit more cohesive than we can do here on the live stream. But I will get this added. We'll have more updates regarding this coming out on Monday when we do our 48-hour stream, just because there's going to be a lot of information, more information hopefully, that comes out over the next 48 hours. When stuff just happens, when that breaking news just happens, it can be very difficult to get information right immediately. So I do apologize regarding that. And I have screwed up my my little setup here, but alrighty, everybody. But with that, that is actually everything ongoing here in the world that we have ongoing right now. And so please be sure to check out our website here in a few, once we are able to actually put together some stuff from our sources, and check out what we got. But the stuff that I have shown you tonight will, for the most part, be added. I want to do a little bit more vetting on some of that stuff and get a little bit more cross-reference on that. But after that, everything will be added, and we will have the story up there for you. But I appreciate very much Bookin 40, who is able to get that out to us. That's very neat. This is part of the awesome thing about this community, is we get stuff like this all the time from you guys, and it really, really helps. It puts a lot of things into perspective. And once again, not everyone has everything. Everyone has all sorts of sources. We continually are trying to expand that source list. And so I really appreciate the help that you guys give us on the Discord, on the live stream, and everything else. So thank you for that. Thank you for your support. And thank you even more for the support that you have for the wonderful organizations in the description, because all of this is affecting people all over the world. So please be sure to go and check out all of those organizations in the description below. 70% or more of the donations that they receive go directly to their programs. 3% or less go to things such as salaries and administration's costs. And in the meantime, I hope that you guys have a fantastic weekend. I hope that you guys have an amazing rest of your weekend, a fantastic Saturday night, Sunday night, and I hope you guys are freshened up and ready to get back to it on Monday. We will be back here once again live at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Central, for another 48 hours of news and review come Monday night. I hope to see you all there. Hopefully we'll get some more updates regarding Iran and things that's happening in Ukraine and throughout the world for you. Once again, my name is Paul from the New News, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your night. Alrighty, everybody. Take care, and bye now.
Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стріляти в головах, і чутно кличе, діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТРО. Нам не треба ні конфлікту, ні війни. Та ми готові всіх вас звать до сатани. Тисячі вже полягло, і все більше шлейфуйло. Тут для них нема нічого, крім труни. Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стріляти в головах, і чутно кличе, діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТРО. Вызволять пришел, братишка, ну привет. На моей земле тебе один ответ. Нашим людям с кирпичом даже танки не пойдем. Вам не взять нас и за 100 тысяч лет. Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стріляти в головах, і чутно кличе, діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТРО.
Mr. Putin, on behalf of all our guys, no one's scared of your nuclear device. You can take your top 11, shove it up your wrinkled bum. Oh, we'll come and help you fit it in your skull.
Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. клич, ідіть нахуй, тут працює ЗСУ і ТРО. Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Від стрия до волновахи і чудно клич, ідіть нахуй, тут працює ЗСУ і ТРО. Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Від стрия до волновахи і чудно клич, ідіть нахуй, тут працює ЗСУ і ТРО. Ідіть нахуй.